Hi, everyone. Welcome to the REC annual meeting. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us this evening. We'll start in a few moments, and we're just letting some other folks come in. Okay, well, thanks again to everyone for joining us for the REC's first virtual annual meeting. My name is Steve Fisher. I'm the REC Executive Director. I have a quick housekeeping note at the top. During the presentation, there will be 3 membership votes, which will be recorded through the Zoom polling function. After the business portion of the meeting, we'll also have a panel discussion followed by a Q&A period. We encourage you to ask questions using the Q&A function and to make comments through the chat or the Q&A. Thank you again for coming. Before we begin, I would also like to take this opportunity to thank our wonderful board, staff, volunteers, and supporters for your tremendous commitment to the work of the REC and to our community over this last year, a year unlike any other. It is an honor to work with you. Now I'd like to introduce REC's board president, Ruben Williams. Ruben will serve as chair and MC of tonight's annual meeting. Thank you, Ruben.
Thank you, Steve. And Steve, you stole my thunder. I was going to thank everyone, especially the staff, for all the work that they did during this last year. And remember, a year ago, we had our annual meeting and no one really understood or knew what was ahead of us. We heard rumors about a virus, but we didn't know how serious the virus was going to be. And it took off. But the great thing in terms of REC was that at REC, the staff turned on a dime and we're able to what? We're able to get out there, work with the people, and keep all of our programs going. So with that, I'd like to give the staff a hand. Thank you, because we did what we said we were going to do, which is bringing people together to create a just food system to build healthy and sustainable, equitable communities in Worcester. Also, I was listening to Louis Armstrong today, his song, What a Wonderful World. And I know this year has really been hard for all of us, but his song resonated with me that let's step back and think of the little things, the flowers, being with our loved ones, being with our family, and just the little things that really make this world a wonderful world, even though we have to make changes in the world. I'd also like to take an opportunity for everyone to bow their heads just to remember those who didn't make it because of the virus. So just take a second, please. Thank you. So now I'd like to tell you what's in store. So we have an action-packed agenda. The agenda, we will start off with introduction of Ted Hudson, who is our treasurer for REC. He will give you the updates on the financial status. Eve Gilmar, she is the chair of our board development committee. She will welcome all new board members as well as take a vote to renew the old board members. And I'm glad that people signed up to go again with REC. And finally, we will have a panel discussion, 40 minutes about the pandemic. You will get to see a video, and then we will let you go. Thank you. And with that, I would like to introduce Ted Hudson. Ted.
Good evening. Thank you all for joining us. I'm going to be relatively brief. We've got limited time tonight. Stephen, why don't you start with the first slide? This turned out to be a very good year for us, fiscal year 20, even though we did have to do a major pivot in mid-year. Total revenue exceeded budget by 39%. Some of the drivers were both major gifts, and our total number of donors increased by greater than 20% over fiscal 19, which is pretty startling. And it's good proof of what our programs have done within the development area. New plans find different revenue streams and concentrate on the areas that are going to be important to us for sustainability going forward. Another thing that was important in terms of revenue when we're looking at different revenue sources is our operations groups contributed over $138,000, which is also a sign of sustainability going forward. Expenses, well, they exceeded budget by 24%. They were more than compensated for by revenue. And it allowed us to spend $172,000 more on programs in fiscal 20 than we did in fiscal 19. And we finished up the year in a very strong cash position of almost $600,000. Now let's look at some charts. Stephen, next slide. Thanks. Again, support and revenue, total of $1.243 million. The thing that really stands out here is contributions and grants made up the largest portion. But if you look at program income, the green section, that was the second largest component of support and revenue. And again, that's a sign of a strong organization who is diversifying its income streams. Next slide, please. Expenses, as I mentioned, up about 24%. The bulk of that money, over 71%, at $823,000 went to our programs. And the next slide, please. Assets. This slide's a little bit messy. There's a lot of little tiny sections in there. But the most important takeaway from this slide is that we finished the year, again, with a very large cash position of $585,000 plus. This is a new territory for REC to be in, and we're going to take advantage of that from the standpoint of our programs. And as you'll be hearing in the near future, some expansion. Next slide, please. Total liabilities. Our liabilities were primarily due to PPP loan of $112,000 that we took, graciously offered by the government. That loan will be forgiven in fiscal 21, we hope. And when it is forgiven, then that liability will settle up in our assets section. Last slide, please. Our net assets, the majority of those are restricted net assets, and those are funds that are limited for use in specific programs designated by the donor or the particular type of grant that we have received. That's all the slides I have. If there are any questions, please use the chat button to put them in and we can get to them. An alternative would be if you want to discuss any of these slides or any of these finances from this past year, you're welcome to email me as well, and we can make that email available. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for listening, and enjoy the rest of the show tonight.
Thank you, Ted. So with that, board members, I would like to hear a proposal that a nomination that people accept the financial report as stated by Ted Hudson. A motion, please. Second.
I second.
All those in favor? Oppose? Abstain? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, I'd like to present Eve Gilmore, and Eve will do the nominating report. So with that, Eve, please, Eve Gilmore.
I need somebody to undo my camera, please. Thank you. Hi, I'm Eve Gilmore. I'm the current chair of the REC Board Nominating Committee, and it's my pleasure to be with you this evening. We have some wonderful people who have agreed to continue to serve on our board of directors, and we're welcoming 3 marvelous candidates that are going to completely enhance the work that we're doing going forward. I'd like to take a moment on behalf of the Board Development Committee in our capacity as the nominating committee to nominate the following individuals to serve a 2-year term as members of the Board of Directors, 2021 to 2023. They are current board members, and they are Ted Hudson, Allison Bryant-Ludden, and Jennifer Madsen. May I have a motion, please?
I move that we accept the current nominating committee's recommendation of Ted Hudson, Allison Ludden, and Jennifer Madsen. Sorry. Second.
I second.
Thank you. All those opposed? All those for? Abstaining? Motion carries. Thank you, Eve.
Thank you. And now newly nominated to the Board of Directors to serve until February 2023. We have 3 new candidates. Our first, Justin Amevor, Chief Executive Officer of Doughboyz, Inc., software engineer in BAE Systems, YouthGROW Alumni. Next, Gabriella Guzman-Jerry. She's current student over at WPI and also a YouthGROW alumni. And last but not least, Carl Rubin, Chief Financial Officer for Web Industries, Inc., and currently retired. Carl currently serves on our Finance Committee, and so we're glad to have him moving up to the board. Thank you. Nomination, please.
Can I hear a motion to accept the 3 new board members? Motion to accept.
I move to accept.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstaining? Motion carries. Thank you, Eve.
Okay, before I go, Ruben, I'd like to just thank our current board members for their service. And just so everybody's aware of who's serving on the board, I identify Pablo Hernandez Itrago, doctor over at Kennedy Health Center, Judy Kirk with the Boys and Girls Club, Emily Linares with the Piedmont Street Center, Julie Orozco with Community Health Link, Francisco Valdez with Webster 5, Ruben Williams, independent consultant, and Stephanie Chris is a professor up at Holy Cross. Thank you all for serving in the past year. And to all of those in our attendance who have been serving on any of our subcommittee boards that are part of the organization, we thank you for your service this year as well and hope that you're having a positive experience. We also know in the audience, we have a couple of past board members and committee members, and thank you for joining us today and continuing to support us all these many years. We're grateful and
Thank you. Thank you, Eve. And now I have the pleasure of introducing Justin Amaral, and he essentially
appreciative of your commitment.
he was just voted in as one of our new board members. But I had a conversation with Justin about 3 weeks ago, and I was very impressed with Justin. Why was I impressed with Justin? Because you hear so much about what people aren't doing, what young people aren't doing, and the comments about young people not being involved. And I was pleasantly surprised because Justin is involved. He was involved with not only REC, but he's the chief executive officer of Doughboyz Incorporated, as well as being a software engineer at BAE Systems. But Justin is doing this thing, and Justin is making it possible for other young people to say, God, if he's doing it, I can do it. Thank you, Justin. And with that, Justin will be the moderator of our panel. And Justin, keep on doing what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruben. That was an amazing introduction. I really appreciate it. And I want to thank the entire REC, the board of directors. Thank you so much for nominating me. And I'm super excited to get to work and to continue the great things that the REC has been doing so far and will continue to do. So without any further ado, we are now going to move into a panel discussion where I will try my best to moderate. I definitely think we have a very interesting topic, and I'll try not to, play my I'll try my best to play my moderator role. So the topic of today's panel discussion is the REC's response to increased food insecurity during a pandemic. So for the first 20 minutes, we will have a panel discussion, and we'll introduce the panelists in a second, where we will, for a while, I will be posing questions to them. And then after, we will open up the floor to the audience to ask questions using the chat function. So please put any questions or any thoughts you have in the chat. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists today. And we first had Gina Plata-Nino, who is the staff attorney and manager of food security outreach for the project at Central West Justice Center. Then we have Grace Sliwoski, the REC director of programs and steering committee member of the Worcester Food Policy Council. And last, we have Keiran Agyapong and Owen Chase, both YouthGROW program junior staff at the REC. Better than me, because I was only a youth leader. So, hello, panelists. And I would like to start by just asking you all to just describe what you do and what you've been involved with in addressing food insecurity in our community. So anyone who would like to go first, just introduce yourself and give us a bit of information on how you work in this space. Um, Anyone can go ahead, whoever's ready.
I can kick it off, Justin.
Gotcha.
So hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be together in this virtual space and want to shout out the hardworking board and staff who have helped to set us up for tonight. A lot of behind the scenes work goes into it. My name is Grace. I'm the Director of Programs at REC. So I get to work really closely with the amazing program coordinators, the YouthGROW staff, our market managers. And I'm here to talk a little bit about the work the REC has done and also the connections that we've built through our participation in Worcester Together, which I'm sure Gina will talk about a little bit more in our presentation as well. Gina and I have had the opportunity to work really closely together through that group. So I will pass the mic to Gina.
Hello, and thank you so much for inviting me. As you said, I'm an attorney at Central West Justice Center. We are fortunate enough to have a partnership with the Worcester County Food Bank. And when you're thinking of innovative projects, that is something that's innovative. Worcester, a food bank investing in someone tackling food insecurity. So you might think, what does an attorney do? So I work more on systemic issues, but at the state and federal level to make sure that our community has access to those resources, particularly SNAP, which we all love because it allows for the HIP program that the REC does so well. But during this pandemic, I have focused more on sort of the community and grassroots efforts around meeting the needs of our community during COVID. And we'll talk more about sort of the projects that we have done, but pretty much I work throughout Worcester County trying to figure out where it be school meal sites, expanding SNAP, figuring out how do we do more outreach so that people can have access to SNAP and other food resources. And I'll turn it over to Keiran.
Hello, my name's Keiran. I'm a junior staff with YouthGROW. I actually attend South High right now. I'm currently a senior, and I've been working with YouthGROW for 3 years now. Started as a core youth, but now I'm a junior staff, and I'll pass it to Owen.
All right, so my name's Owen Chase. I also go to South High, and I'm a junior. And for YouthGROW, I'm a junior staff. So that means 3 years ago, I was introduced to the program, and ever since then, I stuck with it. YouthGROW is like a really nice place, and it's really important. Some things that I do, especially during the summer and throughout the school year, so leading weekly harvest, weeding, mulching, and a lot of farm maintenance just to make sure everything looks nice and that everything's prepared, as well as leading weekly food justice workshops, planning and leading retreats, and leading farm volunteer hours.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for introducing yourselves. So I would like to pose my first question to Grace, and I want to ask you, from the REC's perspective, what you think the biggest challenge faced regarding food security in Worcester is at the current moment.
Yeah, so the biggest challenge, I think that Gina and Keiran and Owen and a lot of other folks would agree that what COVID has done is it's highlighted challenges that already existed that weren't being talked about. But it's also created new challenges and made things harder and more specifically difficult. So one area that's been a big challenge for the community that we work with is access to SNAP and access to the Healthy Incentives Program. And so folks who don't use SNAP might not know this, but there's restrictions at the federal level. So SNAP cannot be used for things like Instacart, which, as we all know, became like a real safety strategy for folks being able to access food with the onset of the pandemic. You need to actually use your SNAP card at the point of transaction. Although that's changed somewhat since the onset of the pandemic, the access is still really limited. And then there's additional barriers specific to Massachusetts because we're really fortunate. We have this great program that's unique to our state called the Healthy Incentives Program, where folks who receive SNAP are automatically eligible for up to $80 additional they can spend on local produce, but they can only spend this at HIP eligible vendors, so farms, farmers markets, CSAs. And with the onset of the pandemic, many of those locations closed. They weren't able to stay open safely. And so there was limited places for people to use their HIP dollars. And the way the HIP program works is that benefit expires every month. So if you can't get to a place where you can use your HIP, that money just goes away. And so this is an area, a specific challenge that REC really focused on is figuring out how can we be creative and keep access to HIP open in Worcester throughout the pandemic the entire time. So I can talk a little bit more about some of the ways that happened and some of the other questions, but I would say that's a specific challenge that a lot of people might not be aware of that's come up.
Great. And I definitely want to open up to any other panelists. If I ask a question to one person, please feel free to chime in. Gina, for Keiran or Owen, if you have any comments as well. But awesome.
Sure. And I would just like to add, to Grace, that we did have a lot of issues that were exacerbated by the pandemic. We've always had transportation issues. Prior to the pandemic, our local DTA office, which administers the SNAP program, have moved miles away to the Route 20 cutoff west, right? So that was going to, how do we get people signed up onto SNAP programs? How do we get them onto this resource when the agency responsible for providing this resource is making it more difficult for them to access it? On top of that, the pandemic happened and everyone's supposed to quarantine. Well, what about folks who depend on going out there? Not all of us can order, like Grace said, utilize our Amazon account or a Peapod account. What about those folks? So a lot of people were homebound. A lot of people didn't have access to resources and had to, they had to decide, do I expose myself to COVID because I don't have the resources to get food delivered to me? How do I get there, especially if I depend on public transportation? Some food pantries closed for a little bit. I do have to highlight the amazing work that the food pantries have done. But, again, the lack of transportation, our geography, the lack of access to these resources, it really exacerbated, and it really, like Grace said, it really highlighted the inequities that exist not only in our city and our statewide, particularly within communities of color.
No, certainly. Yeah. I definitely think that it's the pandemic has shown a lot of the inequalities in the systems that we've had before, and it's something that I think we're all going to be working towards more. So I wanted to turn to Keiran and Owen and ask you all, how do you think the youth plays a role in helping folks during this food crisis? And I think it's definitely an interesting topic because many people don't know that children and youth are one of the most food insecure groups in the entire world. And I just want to see what you all think. So.
I'll just go first. So yeah, so we help the community by growing fruits and vegetables for the REC and the mobile markets, and we also have food like big farmers markets that we sell our food to, and we also, some of the food we grow goes to the youth too. So I'd say that's how we kind of help with the food the food security places. I'd say growing and helping share food with low income communities. I don't know if you want to add anything, Owen.
All right, so one thing we do also is we've grown about 4,000 pounds of produce, and 90% of that we grow, it goes to the farmers market, and the rest of it goes to YouthGROW families and local restaurants. So as a result of the pandemic, we've been able to more widely distribute the food we grow to different YouthGROW families, as well as significantly increasing the amount of food we get to these families. We also work with the market to make sure that they have a wide variety of locally grown veggies.
That's awesome. We appreciate the hard work you all do. So I wanted posing this to Grace and Gina, but anyone please feel free to answer. So what are ways that, food insecurity is a complex problem and there's no one solution. So what are ways that other organizations and people can help and support and, generally just supporting the issues at hand?
I just, before I give you my answer, Keiran and Owen, I'm just loving what you're saying. Your youth grow program, knowing that you're growing all these vegetables and you're so involved and you're in high school, it's so encouraging and inspiring. I can't wait to see what you're doing in 10 years. Thank you for leading this effort. So thank you for that, because I really enjoy hearing from people like you. As to what we can do, Justin, we are so fortunate to be part of the community that we're in. Worcester is so unique in the sense that when the pandemic started, we got together a couple of organizations and said, look, we've been here before with the Puerto Rican evacuee crisis. We know what sort of the things we're going to need in terms of safety net benefits. And so now we're a coalition of almost 100 organizations. There are various subcommittees that meet there in terms of tackling housing, shelter, childcare. Grace and I are part of the food committee. And part of that food committee is we meet on a weekly basis, trying to identify what are the needs in the community. So what we ended up doing is making a centralized space of information, our local family resource center, where people can get that information, and meeting weekly to find out, okay, this particular neighborhood is not getting enough resources. People are asked to quarantine. Okay, what is the state doing? What sort of lack of help we're not getting at the federal level? You're asking to quarantine, but you're not getting people food, right? So people are now going to go out and get the food. So through many partnerships, we created something called the Hot Meals Program, where people who are COVID positive receive a restaurant meals for 2 weeks. And not only were we helping our community so that they could quarantine and we can stop the spread of COVID, but we were also helping our restaurant industry. The REC has been instrumental as part of this. People were really craving fresh fruits and vegetables. And Grace can talk more about the program and how she made it more accessible for people. But these are just some of the very few ways that our city is really breaking the mold and leading the way. And what I love about our city is the collaboration. It's 5 or 6 organizations, and everyone's like, okay, who's going to be the fiscal sponsor? Doesn't matter who it is. We're just working together because we want to get the work.
Yeah, I would echo everything Gina is saying. I think one thing that's been really inspirational for me is just participating in the food working group meetings for Worcester Together. You can literally see problems being solved in the meeting. And that's not that common. I think that's a new thing for COVID. One small example of this, we had a meeting over the summer where food pantries were getting these produce, USDA produce boxes for folks to get healthy produce, which is so important. But they were noticing that people who came on foot, it was really hard to carry the produce. It's too heavy. And so this came up, Catholic Charities was saying this is a challenge folks are facing. And then during the meeting, folks brought up, well, what about those rolling carts they use in New York? Could we provide those? What do they cost? Let's Google them. We have to have a funder on the call. Kim Salmon was there. And we kind of talked through and troubleshooted a solution to the problem right in that Zoom room, which was just really incredible to see. I think other ways that folks on this call can specifically get involved and help. One I would call out is donating resources through the PEBT program, if you're able to do that. And so any folks on here who are the parents of a Worcester Public School student, you should have received a pandemic EBT card with the value of the school meals that your child would have received had they been in school. I also want to plug the school meal pickup offerings that Worcester Public is providing at different locations around the city. They're really good. They have really good options available. I know it's challenging for people to access them, but that is a great option. But for folks who do have PEBT, if you don't need that extra resource and you're not using the card because you're feeling guilty that you don't really need it, I would encourage you to do one of a few things. So one thing that you can do is you can just use that card and shop in the grocery store for what you'd normally buy. This helps remove stigma for folks who are SNAP users. It's very easy to use. It's just like a debit card. And then take the value of that grocery trip and you can donate it to an organization that's doing frontline COVID response work. Another option that you can do is if you'd like to directly support the local food economy, you can contact me or Ashley Carter, our farmers market coordinator, and we will coordinate a purchase of local food through the mobile market program. And we'll work with a network of emergency food pantries that we're connected to Worcester Together. And we'll deliver that donation to the food pantry. We'll make sure it's something that they need and that they can get distributed. And that's just a great opportunity to support emergency food response and support our local farmers who have really suffered. So I think that's something specific that folks can do that's really helpful. I know for our organization, we're not currently working with in-person volunteers for safety reasons, but we hope to welcome volunteers in small groups on the farm outdoors in the spring once the weather allows. And I know that there are groups and organizations doing work, including Meals on Wheels and some of the other emergency food response that do have no contact volunteer opportunities, doing things like delivering meals to seniors. And so I think there are a lot of options and ways that folks can connect and support to the work, even in the winter, even in this time of quarantine.
And I will add, Grace, that it's something that people can do from the comfort of their home that only takes less than a minute, is contact your state representative, your state senator around. There's so many policy pieces coming down the pipeline, legislations being filed, this Friday, and there's so many things at the state and federal level. You talked about HIP, right? We want to extend HIP funding. There's possible legislation to bring a restaurant meals program to our city, making sure that other DTA offices don't move further, eliminating hunger on college campuses. There's so much legislation down the pipeline that our delegation has taken a leadership on. So I'm happy to give you what those dockets are, how people can get involved as part of your newsletter. And I know that Grace is very involved in these policy aspects as well. But that's like the bigger picture, right? Because we need that backing. We need those policies, we need those bills, those regulations to help the work that we can do on the micro level.
Thank you for sharing those things. And I want to say that was definitely a lot of information that hope if you're interested, please reach out to the RAC, please reach out to Gina. So if you're ready to get involved, these are people to come to. And quickly, I also just want to remind everyone that the question and answer function is open. So if you have questions, please send them in. We've gotten a few so far, so that's great. So something, Gina, that you said that was really interesting to me is, talking about the community and the sense of, togetherness that we have. And I definitely feel that in the Worcester community. I definitely sense this feel of progressiveness and sense of, kind of social justice that our community is radiating, and because we need to, it's a necessity. But one of the things I'm curious about asking, and I'm interested in hearing, is just about, do you think like there's being enough done on the state level, even in your organizations, and also in terms of the youth? Do you think that there's enough being done? And being a youth myself, well, we are youth, but sometimes youth don't get a say in a lot of these community issues. So just getting maybe if one of the youth growers wanted to talk about first, what is there enough being done on from the state level, from the community level, or are we doing the best we can?
I think there's always work to be done. One of the things that we have seen is sometimes, even though, for example, Worcester's the second largest city in New England, sometimes we get passed for resources, right? We see cities that are closer to Boston get more resources than we do. So that's an ongoing challenge, right? If you look at the task forces around like food insecurity, vaccine distribution, any of the programs that has been established by the administration, it includes majority, 90 to 80% of the people are from Boston, right? In terms of what sort of like role the youth could play in, a lot of the services that are being distributed, a lot of these agencies don't talk to people with lived experience, don't talk to people who are on the ground doing things. For example, we said that we had an issue. We needed to make sure that people who were being quarantined had resources, right? So we partner, we give them food, we give them resources. One of the suggestions from at the state level was, well, let's give them this box that Grace mentioned. It's 35 pounds. How do you figure that grandpa's going to be able to pick up this box without transportation from a food pantry a mile out? Like, it's just, I wish that they would call, the food pantry providers, that they will call the first responders, that they will call the people on this call and say, listen, we have this great idea. Can you tell us? But I think that's a work in progress. And I think this is where the youth can really have a voice, right? Because of them, like, for example, the meals program, the school has it that, through much advocacy, people can just pick it up. And now they even have a delivery program, right? But that was after a lot of advocacy, right? And we're so grateful for the school district and the YM who's a partner. But you do have a voice because you're being affected the most. You're at home through the virtual system. It's really good to hear from you. And I think keep advocating. We have a wonderful here in Central Mass, a state delegation that listens to us at a federal level as well. Reaching out to them and telling them what our issue is, because we can only do so much. And they're really our voice at that level, and they can really advocate. And I'm sure they want to hear from Keiran, from Owen, sort of the work and the thing that you're seeing on a day-to-day basis, because it's important for them to know what they need to advocate for.
Thank you. So my next question would be to Karen and Owen. What you both are doing is very inspiring, and it's a great service to our community. So we just want to get a sense of what keeps you motivated and what drives you to do the great work that you both do.
All right, so something that makes me constantly put in more work and time and energy into helping youth grow is that it's just a great place to work in general, because like our work, we are always like, we're constantly helping the community. It's also like a great environment for youth grow itself. It's kind of like a family. I feel like all other jobs that are offered to youth, I feel like they don't really have as much of a connection as YouthGROW does, because with YouthGROW, like we are actually working towards the common goal instead of like working at as a waiter or something. It's also really fun. I like to learn about farming, and working with YouthGROW, it helps me like be outside more and learn stuff like that, so I could help the environment. If I wasn't working in YouthGROW, I'd probably be working at a different job, like either at my sister's business or some other place. But I definitely enjoy YouthGROW more than anything else. So I'm really grateful that I can be a part of this.
That's amazing. Thank you. Karen.
Oh yeah. Yeah, so like Owen was saying, I say what drives me to still be in youth grows that family aspect. It's like we all come together, like kids all over from Worcester that you barely know, and you just have one summer with them, and everybody's just so close at the end, and it's crazy. And then also like we're helping the community too, low income communities, all these kids, helping them, like we're just trying to make a difference. Also like out of youth grow, there's so many like different connections. Like last year I did a internship with Boston College. Actually, we built a hydroponic system so you can like grow foods like without soil and like water and sun. It's growing vegetables with just clay and like water and this whole system. Learning that stuff and all these different connections, like you could become successful out of this. So that's what drives me.
Thank you for those responses. So it is now 6:45. So we are now going to start opening up to questions being asked from the audience. And we have a few, so please keep them coming in. So one of the first questions we got reads, what are some of the challenges that have been made during the COVID-19 that have unexpected positive effects? And, kind of basically saying, we're in a very tough situation with the pandemic, but what silver linings can we see moving forward? What's going to bring us together to get out of this? Open to anyone on the panel.
Yeah, I can jump in on that one, Justin. So I think I've thought about this question a lot. I've had the opportunity to talk about it a lot over the course of the past year. And I would really come back to what was said in the beginning of the panel, that there's been a real opportunity for collaboration and for creativity in the responses to the pandemic that I think and hope will continue when this is over. I think specifically for the REC, this challenge really propelled us to push through and to roll out new programs and to figure out new options and solutions at a really fast pace that we would not have normally done. And we had some really great successes. So the Hip to Go pickup program that we launched in the spring, when we first built that, we were working on Google Apps script in my house, YouTubing how to do it, really just by the seat of our pants, and with a lot of support from our partners at the Worcester Regional Food Hub. Our signs when we started are just flip chart papers that we had up in a parking lot. And we were really able to grow that program. And now if you check out our website, just to do a shameless plug here, we have a full, robust online store. We have instructions in 4 different languages, and we have an amazing team rolling out this pre-order pickup system, serving 5 sites. We've got a 40-foot cold storage trailer generously housed at the Worcester Youth Center. I could not have imagined we would have done these things if you asked me this last January. And I think for the YouthGROW team, you guys have been incredible. So the youth leader team this spring coordinated a hiring process 100% on Zoom of all of their peers, with the youth doing the interviews, which is just amazing to me, and then helped with the adult staff to develop a virtual farming program, which sounds impossible, but these guys figured it out. They worked together on Mondays and they created workshops and YouTube tutorials on starting seeds at home. They built raised bed gardens for their peers who were in the virtual program. If people didn't have space for a raised bed garden, we gave them grow bags. If they didn't have space for grow bags, we found them a community garden plot. If they weren't near a community garden plot, we set up an indoor growing operation. So every member of the virtual YouthGROW cohort had an opportunity to grow food this summer. And I think that that is something we would love to continue. We would love for all of the youth growers to have the opportunity to work in person on the farm, but also be able to grow at home and share that with their families. We actually, Gabby, one of our new board members, advocated for her grandmother to get a raised bed garden at the end of the program with material that we have left over from the Beds for Youth Growers. So continuing to spread the love for growing food. And really just want to shout out all of the hard work and creativity that it took to make that happen. I think also just seeing the resiliency and the adaptations of our young people. So again, I'm going to embarrass Owen and Keiran, but really shouting you guys out for how you've developed Zoom facilitation skills. You're here on a Zoom panel. These guys have been called in for virtual funder tours, all sorts of different things that, again, were not imaginable a year ago. And so I think that a lot of those literal program innovations and strategies, but also the spirit of figuring it out and being creative and working together will continue, and are strong things that will come out of this.
If there's one thing we know, it's that the REC is resourceful. Awesome. So one of the following questions we got was, Richard, what happened to kids who are not able to get breakfast and lunch at school during the pandemic? And it kind of relates to something I said earlier, children being the most food, or one of the biggest groups of people who suffer from food insecurity. So what kind of support is there for children, or what if any knowledge or information on like what is happening or what support we can give?
Yeah, so from the federal level, through various bills, they created something called the pandemic EBT, which meant so kids who would have been eligible to receive free or reduced school meals, they will get the value amount of the daily amount put in a card, right? So that's what Grace was talking about, the PEBT program. So kids got, when the school closed in March all the way to June, got a set amount, about $400. And now monthly they've been getting it. The amount is different because a lot of kids are hybrid. So if they're going to school, they're going to be getting less. So that's that piece. In addition to, I can speak at least as to the city of Worcester and a couple of other cities, they have school meal sites. They have opened, and the school has been very open to this, where people can just go in and say, my name is Gina. I have 3 kids that go to this particular school. I'm going to pick up for the next 3 days. In addition to that, and it's breakfast and lunch. In addition to that, because of the transportation issues we have in Worcester, they have partnered with the YMCA. And the YMCA, if you fill up a form online, they deliver the food to these parents who can't get to the school sites. So those are the main programs. And I know that the REC has posted a couple of flyers on PBT. So we can send that out again. But those are the things that have been done for the students at this moment.
Awesome. So, Grace?
Oh, I just wanted to say, I see there's another question also about support for college students and those who are out of school. And I think that's definitely really true. There is some great work. Quinn-Sangamon Community College already had some great on-the-ground work for hunger outreach and on-campus food pantry. We have done some mobile market pilots with them. Worcester State University also has some great student and staff outreach for hunger resources and supports there. I know that there's been the organizing around Muslim Community Length with the Ojima Food Pantry, specifically for international students. But I would also want to just say, and for everyone to know, that food pantries are accessible for college students as well. And so one of the things we talk about a lot in Worcester Together is removing stigma and misconceptions around food pantries and around access to existing food services. And I feel privileged to have had the opportunity over the past year to work more closely with a lot of really experienced food pantry managers and folks working in food pantries across the city. They're fantastic resources. They really are doing a great job advocating to bringing fresh produce, advocating to bring culturally relevant offerings. And so those are resources available to college students as well. Gina, I don't know if there's other initiatives I'm missing.
Yes, so we always have SNAP as well that we talked about. Because of a lot of advocacy at the federal level, there were certain additional steps that college students had to take in order to be eligible, like working X amount of hours and so on, which kids are not in college campuses, so it's difficult. So I'm happy to provide more information on that, but we encourage people to access SNAP. In addition to that, like you're right, you have vulnerable populations who get meals at school, and then you graduate high school and those things haven't disappeared because now you're going to college. So a couple of state advocates and hunger advocates are filing legislation on how to eliminate hunger on college campuses and in community colleges and state colleges. So I'm happy to provide information as well as my email if people want to join that coalition. But I just want to again highlight the SNAP program because it gives you choice. It allows you to pay for the food that you want. And right now, because of the pandemic, people are getting the maximum amount, which is about $204. It's actually a little bit higher now. So we really are encouraging folks to, sign up for SNAP because you get choice and you also get to support the local economy. You're shopping locally, and you can also get HIP resources for that.
Awesome. So we only have like a minute left, but I did want to get to this last question to Keiran and Owen. And I just want to ask you all, how has YouthGROW like impacted your thoughts on your future, or like, giving you education on like what you want to do and like when later. So,
Oh yeah, like I was saying, like the sense of family. So even throughout, cause I'm a senior right now, throughout like my college process, I was always getting, oh Keiran, like how's it going? How's it going? All this help through the college process and stuff. They YouthGROW offers that, and just being there for you like with whatever you need. I'd say, and also me just wanting to come back after I go to college, like just come back to help. That's just like the effect that YouthGROW like have on you.
I feel like YouthGROW has such a positive impact on my future because not only is it my first job and like a very supportive job in general, it's a leadership program that helps the community. So I'm also a Boy Scout and I'm a leader there as well. So that's something that college and resumes are really like looking for. Uh, and it's a really important trait to have as a person. So this is going to be like a great start for future jobs, and it would look great on college. So I can't believe that I have that opportunity in general to learn leadership and help the community through this program.
It definitely does. You're right. Work for Doughboyz is straight hired. Well, thank you all. Thank you. Big thanks to all of our panelists. This definitely was a great discussion, and just a big round of applause for you all. Thank you so much. And with that, our panel comes to a close, and I will pass it back to Ruben. So thank you all again for coming.
Thank you, Justin, as well as the panelists. And wow, you know, what really resonated with me was the question around the motivation. What motivates you? To our two panelists, Keiran and Owen, and just saying that, you know, helping people, helping the community, feeling like it's a family. They're working towards a common goal. It was fun, as well as learning how to farm. And also, it was nice to know that they created these YouTube videos around education and gardening. So again, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you to the panelists. Thank you to everyone who tuned in and listened. I hope you learned something. REC is a great organization. I'm honored and happy to be associated with the organization. Also, would like to let you know that if you go to our go into the chat room, there should be a link to our website, and you can see the annual report. And finally, in conclusion, we have a video for you to watch about what happened, what did we do in the year 2020, especially during this pandemic. And again, thanks everyone for tuning in. Be safe out there, and hopefully this time next year, we can all be in one room. Get vaccinated, please. Thank you. Hello? Gwen.
You're good, Ruben. We can hear you.
Oh, yeah. Are we
Yep.
still on?
Yep, you can just say goodnight to everybody.
Oh, good night, everyone. Thank you.